A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. People who work in surveillance, what's the most unexplained or creepy thing you've seen on video? Work as a doctor in a hospital in the UK, was on a night shift that was particularly quiet and some of the nurses were sitting around telling this story. A young doctor was running to a crash call. Our hospital is a giant L shape, with the front entrance being at the bend. A woman stopped him and asked him which way the exit was. He directed her and kept running. When he got to the patient, it was the woman who asked him for directions. She died. Apparently it got caught on the CCTV that doctor stopped mid-running down the hallway, and gestured toward the exit while saying something to no one in particular. I was house-sitting in a huge house and set up a canary camera near my bedroom. I had an uneasy feeling someone else was in the house with me, so I set up the camera just to make sure no one came near my room. In the middle of the night someone approached it from behind and turned it so it faced a blank wall. Then a few minutes later turned it back the way it was before. It tripped the canary and I got a notification on my phone. I saw it and searched the house thoroughly the next morning and never found anything. Needless to say, I slept with my door locked the rest of my time there. I used to work overnights at a hotel and would monitor the security cameras. They would detect motion and a little indicator would blink when motion was, well, detected. Anyway, it always gave me the creeps when I'd hear the elevator ding. I'd run out to the lobby to grate the guest to make sure they didn't need something or whatever, and nobody would get off the elevator. I'd watch the tapes and see the motion indicator blinking on a floor, then see the elevator open on that floor, then see the elevator open on the ground floor and the motion indicator blink on the camera down the hall. Gave me the heebie-jeebies. Also one time I was in my office in the middle of the night and it sounded like someone banged on the door with the side of their fist. Just one single slam. You can see me reacting to it on the video. My head whipped to face the door where the sound came from, then immediately whipped around to stare at the camera to see who the fuck was outside my door. There was nobody there, and none of the motion sensors had picked up anything. Not fun finishing the rest of that shift. I worked in a maximum security prison for a while. I was assigned to Central Control one night, which is where the camera screens were. One of the cameras was for the classifications room. I glanced at it and there was an inmate in there. This was super odd because it was 2 in the morning and nobody was supposed to be in there. Everyone that had keys to that room went home at 5. Anyways, so this inmate is just sitting in there doing nothing. I got the sergeant's attention and told him someone was in there, and gave him the spare key to the room. He went to go check it out with a couple of other people, but by the time they got there, the room was empty. They searched for like 15 minutes but there was definitely no one in there. I used to be a guard at a correctional facility. It seems those places just invite creepy things. When I was training as a runner one night, I was going with my FTO to relieve someone for a break. I had left my water sitting on top of the water cooler in that pod. When we entered the pod, I saw my cup slide off of the water cooler, hang in the air for a split second, and splash onto the ground. I turned and saw my FTO who looked unnerved, so I asked him if he saw that. He told me, "I didn't see shit, dude." He refused to talk about it after that. One time when I was a runner for the building our isolation unit was in, I heard the bars shaking in one of the units. It was after lockdown, so I was a little perturbed by this inmate making noise. So, I pulled my keys, unlocked the cell, and saw the bars shaking, but the inmate cowering in the corner crying. After a couple of seconds, the bars stopped shaking. I hung out with the inmate for a while calming him down. I made up some BS about how we had water pipes that were causing the bars to shake. Unfortunately, that cell was pretty notorious for being haunted. Finally, me and several other runners were called out to search the building for someone who was seen entering our visitation lobby around 11:30 p.m. I checked the only doors going into the lobby and they were fully secured. We searched for a good 30 minutes, even climbing into the false ceiling, and never found a person matching the description given. I used to have an apartment pretty close to my office. The office building was kind of in a business district, but it was also kind of off on its own relative to the city's commercial district footprint. I sold the apartment, and before moving into my new home, I left my bicycle chained to the building's bike rack. It was only going to be there for a few days in that no man's land before I was able to move into the new place. Anyway, one day in the middle of the week, I come into the office, walk past the bike rack and notice that it's completely empty. The building has a bunch of security cameras and one more or less is facing the bike rack since it's adjacent to the front entryway. I sit and watch the security tape with the IT guy. We're watching, see everyone leave the office the night before, see the bike, keep watching, then all of a sudden poof, bike gone. We slowed the tape down and it seemed like when you're watching digital cable or satellite and the image gets garbled. Literally it was bike there, then poof gone. In the tape's time stamp it literally happened in 1 second. I assume my bike got taken to the upside down. I work security. During the weekdays I'm doing parking, while weekends I'm at the desk solo. I'll always remember this one Saturday. It was the second shift ever working the weekend and I was watching the cameras when this one guy came to the side door. He looked around inside and just before I could activate the speaker to let him know he was on private property he looked directly at the camera and stared what felt like a minute. When I took my hand away from the button he started to walk away. I ran to the side door to see if I could see where the hell he was walking and he was gone. The only thing that was in that direction was more freaking wall. So to this day whenever I'm watching the cameras, I'm waiting for this guy. Last week we had to call the cops when my girlfriend's cell phone was stolen off the porch of our apartment, which is a room sectioned off on the first floor of an old mansion with a fenced-in balcony/porch. Officer asked to see surveillance tapes and the maintenance guy let us come along and watch to help with time frames and narrow down the footage. Unfortunately we never saw the person who took her phone. Right about the time we expected to see someone grab the phone, however, we did see a man, not a resident, there are 4 of us and we all know each other, who appeared to be running from something frantically and at full force enter the only door of the building and never leave even after over 24 hours of footage. This happened a few years before I started working at my current job. The elevators in my building go down to the first and second basement. Late one night, one of our security guards spots a group of people heading into the elevator at level 4. He thinks it's curious because nobody is supposed to be in the building after midnight, so he keeps a close watch on all the lobby cameras to see which floor the group alights at. The doors open at basement 2, but nobody comes out. The second guard scurries down to the elevator doors while the first guard keeps his eye on the cameras to make sure no one has left. When the second guard gets to the basement elevator, he looks puzzled and searches around. He comes back to the guard station to confirm that it's empty. Putting the building on lockdown, the 2 guards spend the rest of the night combing the building together, but they were unable to find anyone or anything. They decide to call the police, who review the footage and see the same thing. In the end, the sighting was still unexplained, but my workplace decided to stop being cheap and install security cameras in the elevators too. I'll share this one again. I've posted this before, and it's been a while, so see how my memory goes. I used to work at a place which required to be manned 24 hours a day. Reason being is that I handled sensitive documents/files, and if somebody needed this information in the middle of the night I would have to fetch it for them, or confirm that I have it. Anyways, security is kind of tight. Bars on windows, multiple locked doors to get to where I am. They would give me work to do during the night, but underestimated how quickly I could get it done. So like most nights, I finished my work in like 30 to 45 minutes and pulled out my phone and played games/Netflix, browse Reddit, since nobody else is in the building at night. So now it is getting to be the last third of my shift when all of a sudden I hear a door close. I look to the security camera and see someone walking down a hall towards my room. At first I thought it was just somebody that came in, ridiculously, early, so I turn around and wait for them to come in. But nobody came in, and the hairs start rising on my back. Now, this isn't a really big building, so I figure I'll find the guy wherever he is and start checking offices and storage rooms, but come up empty-handed. However, I do see that a fire door had shut. I go to try and rewind the camera, but the digital recording is password protected and I don't know the password. Anyways, the whole thing freaked me out, the way the person was walking down the hallway, like a determined walk right to where I was. So, I sit with my spine tingling for the last couple hours of my shift, and finally people start coming in. My replacement shows up and I tell her what I saw, and at this point I figured I must have imagined the whole thing. I'm told to go home and the manager and girl who replaced me would look over the camera. After getting home I call my manager and ask what was on the camera. So they said that the video showed the fire door closing, but then the video froze for about an hour. The next thing it records is me reopening the door. I edited together the footage from the security cameras outside Pulse before, during, and after the shooting. Though there were many sad and/or disturbing things to be seen, the strange one was a wounded man that appeared out of nowhere. He waved his hands for help and cops came over and carried him to safety. I tried numerous times to rewind to find out where he came from, but he was just there or he wasn't. He didn't crawl to where he had gotten, he just appeared. He looked like he made it out okay. Used to work hospital security and we had video cameras accessible in the office. Unexplainable. Once we were eating lunch, watching the cams to the parkade. There was a barrier that went down to block the exit until you paid. Some lady in a minivan pulled up really slowly to the arm, stopped and then put pedal to the metal. Blasted through the arm blockade, snapping it into smithereens. She then stopped on the other side for a good 30 seconds before casually driving off. Since she did it so casually, we assume it was intentional. Creepy. During body escorts, we kept finding the morgue door open. That was weird because it was a heavy door that could only be opened with a keycard. Pathologists were blaming security and security was blaming pathologists for leaving it open, as we were the only two groups with access. I did a body escort one day, made sure to close the door behind me and went back to work. Not even a half hour later, the office got a call bitching that the last guard left the door open. I swore up and down I didn't and went to check the cameras. The cameras showed me pulling the door shut, pushing on it and then wiggling the locked handle to ensure it was closed. I wasn't even out of frame from the camera yet before we could see the door swing all the way open, hit the wall and then slowly swing shut until it was slightly ajar. Still dunno WTF. I posted this not long ago for a similar question, but here it is again as it's the strangest thing I've come across in my place. I work for a security company. We install and monitor CCTV on construction sites. One night, about 2 a.m., our response officer gets a call from the monitoring station to say there's a guy walking around one of the buildings under construction. They described him as tall, dressed in all black with his hood up, but couldn't see his face because he had his back to the camera. He wasn't stealing or vandalizing, just wandering around, usually homeless looking for shelter. So the response goes to investigate. When he gets there there's nobody around, so he asks the station to check the camera covering the way in/out of the building to see which direction he went, but there's nothing. He does a full patrol of the site and there's no trace of anyone. The only other way for this guy to get out was to shimmy down scaffolding and he could be hurt, so the response officer asks the station to do a check on all of the camera footage through the night to see if there's any sign of him leaving. Nothing. The next day we ask the station to send over the stills from when they initially picked the intruder up. He's not on any of them. Just footage of our response officer walking around. We were pretty freaked out talking about it in the office, and it was laughed off as the monitoring officer being sleepy and seeing things, except the cameras we use have IR beams and they only alert the monitoring station when someone breaks them. I work in the office of 2 people who were murdered at work. My desk is actually from one of the victims. I have a CCTV surveillance monitor that sits on my desk and shows me the front door entrance so I can see whenever someone approaches. Door stays locked for security. I am the only person in this office. I don't believe in ghosts, but every day my eyes play tricks on me and I feel like I see someone on the screen coming and going. It's in my peripheral vision. This happens probably 3 or 4 times a day, every day. I hope it's not ghosts. I can't imagine being stuck at work for all of eternity. Not surveillance, but a home security footage. I had been living with my godparents at the time. It was around 6 p.m. and my godfather gets back from work and asks why there is blood near the pool in the backyard. I had been in the room right next to the pool the whole time, so I had no idea what he was talking about. We pull up the security footage and it shows a man jumping the fence in broad daylight, cutting himself with the barbed wire, and looking for ways to get into the house through the back. I was maybe 10 feet away from him at one point and did not hear a thing. Scary to think what could have happened if a window was open. Late to the party, but I used to be an on-site security guard on 3rd shift. I was walking a site, an old Catholic school. Anyways, there was an old statue of the Virgin Mary out behind the school with a spotlight. Someone thought it would be funny to make it look like it was crying blood. It was red paint. There was another instance where I was patrolling one of the classroom buildings and all of a sudden I heard people laughing upstairs. I walked up the stairs and I started hearing furniture moving, but every single light was off and all the doors were locked. I noped the fuck out of there and never went in that building after my first walkthrough for the night. It was incredibly creepy, especially when you heard the heat kick on. Every pipe in that place would start knocking. Very grateful for my 9 to 5 in a cubicle now. I worked at a motel and our overnight employee mentioned that a guest's door was open at 1 a.m. She went in and the guest was sound asleep, so she woke her and asked if she had meant to leave the door wide open. Of course not, so the guest was freaked. We had to go through the footage and from what it looks like, the door just swung wide on its own, but not super quickly. And no one in sight. My best guess is she just didn't close it all the way and the wind blew it open. But it still looked creepy as hell. Also I checked and the only other person who stayed with the motel with that guest's same last name stayed in that same room like 6 years previously. I work for a security company and my coworkers would always joke about our building's ghost. My first experience was on 3rd shift. I always work 3rd shift, so it was just a normal night to me. Anyway, it was a quiet night, not many alarms and very few call-ins. I noticed around 2 a.m. a figure of what looked like a man standing in the empty parking lot, except for my car, and triggered the lights in that section to see what it was. The lights turn on and nothing was there. I figured I must have been seeing things and go back to playing games on my phone. A few minutes later, cameras start going offline from the parking lot to the rear of the building. They came back on after about 10 minutes and I try to justify it in my head. About 30 minutes later, the interior camera at the rear door goes offline, followed by the cameras for the rear hall and a few side halls. So from the rear door someone would have to have a security badge to pass through the 7 doors until they got to Central Station where I was. And the badge level required changes, meaning only a Central Station guard or upper management would be able to get to where I was without having someone else with them. I point this out because the last camera to go offline was the one right outside my room. When it went out, I put on hand on my holster and the other an inch from my desk's panic button and waited. Nothing happened and eventually the cameras came back up. I mentioned it to a few of the other CS guards and a few of them said they had experienced it as well, but no one knew why it had happened. I always feel a little uneasy at work now, but I get paid enough that I haven't looked for a new job.